Going now, hopefully. So this final ANZALS in Conversation for 2025 is about making community research partnerships work. We start off with a mihi or a Māori welcome because we're here, or I am here in Aotearoa. If you are in Australia and you would like to do a welcome to country, you can acknowledgement of country, sorry, you can pop that in the chat for us. That would be lovely. So tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki te ANZALS kōrero, no waitaha ahau ko Trudy Walters tōku ingoa, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So hi everybody, welcome to this ANZALS in Conversation. I am in Canterbury, which is here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in the South Island. My name's Trudy Walters, therefore hello to you all. And also because we like to follow the tikanga or the protocols of the country that we're in, we do a karakia or a prayer to open. And this one is called Tū Tawa Mai. So Tū Tawa Mai I runga, Tū Tawa Mai I raro, Tū Tawa Mai I waho, Tū Tawa Mai I roto. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, Rich. Okay, so without further ado, this is an ANZALS event. So if you haven't been introduced to ANZALS before, it's the Australian and New Zealand Association for Leisure Studies. We've been going for decades now, and this is one of the things that we do for our members. We've been doing them 4 times a year for the last few years. And the ANZALS in Conversation format is quite open. It's a Q&A. We have essentially a conversation between myself and our panelists. There's no PowerPoints with the exception of that first one. The audience, you're more than welcome to post any questions that you've got in the chat and we'll answer them at the end, or you can unmute during the Q&A time at the end if you like and ask your questions then. So who have we got with us today? We are very, very fortunate to have 4 amazing wahine toa, or women of strength and power. I'll introduce them one by one. Adama Kamara has over 20 years working in refugee services, health and local government, as well as experience supporting newly arrived refugees from her home country of Sierra Leone. She works in refugee advocacy and volunteers on a range of community projects, raising awareness about the experience of refugees and community development projects with African communities in Western Sydney. She has a passion for community-led initiatives and is an advocate for meaningful participation, and she's led several co-design projects with diverse communities. So kia ora Adama, welcome. Fatma Mohamed is a community development professional. She's got over 25 years experience in social welfare, cultural development and grassroots advocacy. She's focused on supporting migrant and refugee communities, particularly African diaspora groups in Western Sydney. She co-founded the Somali Welfare and Cultural Association and the Africultures Festival, which is a major annual event celebrating African cultures, inclusion and community engagement. And in a moment, I'll ask Adama and Fatma to talk a little bit about the Somali Welfare and Cultural Association. We have Pavlina Jasovska, and she's a senior lecturer in international business and strategy at UTS Business School in Sydney. She studies how organisations develop strategies in markets where society holds conflicting cultural values and expectations. Her current research projects focus on authenticity and sense of place of craft and artisan firms and legitimacy work in migrant and refugee-led organisations. And lastly, we have Dr. Najmeh Hassanli, who is a senior lecturer also at UTS Business School, and her research explores how community-led organisations foster inclusion, belonging and resilience. Her work highlights the transformative role of leisure in empowerment and resistance, particularly for migrants and refugees, using participatory methods to inform socially just and culturally responsive organisational and policy practices. So you can see between the 4 women, we have got a wealth of experience in this area. And so we're really privileged to have them as a group here today joining us from Sydney. So Adama and Fatma, would you like to tell us a wee bit about the Somali Welfare and Cultural Association?
Great, thank you, Trudy, for that introduction. Hello, everybody, and welcome. So, Somali Welfare is a non-for-profit voluntary organization. It was established in 2001. We didn't sort of set out to establish an organization. During that time, a lot of especially Somali women and young people were brought into Sydney as refugees. And there was a gap there, the settlement gap, the women not understanding the system, not knowing what to do. So it's that big gap, and voluntarily we started to support these women. And from that on, we realized that in order to support them, like even wanting a meeting space, you had to be registered, you had to have volunteer. And that's, I think, how it all turned around. But moving on from there, I think we have obviously established ourselves. We can now use all the rooms and facilities from council. We've developed more projects. Our initial projects were just for women and young people. We've gone on to do, as the communities needed a lot of capacity building work, is what we're involved now at the moment. We still work with the women. The initial project still happens, but we've got, employment projects for young people. We do events like Africultures Festival, the refugee camp in our neighborhood. And I think that's what brought all of us together, isn't it, Adama?
Yeah.
Wow, so you've been doing this for a long time, and one thing has led to another, and it's become a huge powerhouse of I guess support, really, isn't it? Support and integration for your refugee people who've come to, and migrants who've come to Sydney. So that's fantastic. So today's conversation is going to be in the form of reflections from our panelists who have been working together on a community engaged research partnership over several years. And they had a conversation recently while they were sitting in a local library together in Western Sydney. And so this idea for us to tap into that conversation has come from that. So the discussion was part of a book chapter, and that was titled "The Truth in Us: Confessions from Community Engaged Research," aimed for a book on doing research methods differently. So they're going to present some reflective stories, and there's going to be 4 different parts. And so just in case we kind of get off track a little bit, which could happen, I'm going to introduce each of the parts just so that everyone knows where we're up to. So the first part is how they began. Then we're going to look at how they worked together. Then we'll look at the challenges and the joys, and then what they learned and what advice they have to share. And then after each of their reflections, I'm going to ask a few questions just to unpack their experiences a little bit further. So for you as the audience, I'd like you to write down what stands out to you. Like, have you been in similar situations in your research partnerships? What would you do in those circumstances? Have you got any insights or any questions that you'd like to share? So everybody ready? Fantastic. So part 1, how we began. Trust, first contact, early impressions. Take it away, team.
Thank you. So, Fatma, I remember the first time I picked the phone and I called you. And I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I just heard you present and talk about the community organization, SWCA. And I just thought that there might be something we could talk about, and there might be a way that we could work together. Even though I didn't know you, I did make the call, and that's how we initially connected, right?
That's correct, Najmeh. But then a few things, sort of, I could just feel it in your voice. Because to start off, you made the call. You initiated the call. You made that effort just to call. And I felt like, when speaking to you, I just felt like we were on the same page. There was nothing, what we wanted is sort of what you are really trying to offer us. How can I help? It was more you wanting to support us rather than I want to do this or do that. So I think that helped. I also think that, you I suppose I'm trying to relive it, but you didn't have any agenda. And that, I think, is what made the real difference to us.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was easy to build trust because there was no agenda. You came and you wanted to know what we were interested in and what we wanted to do. And really, this journey has been a relational journey. It wasn't transactional where you do this for me, I do this for you. It was more, let's get to know each other and understand who we are and what we need and how we're going to work together. And a lot of time was spent on that. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because on reflection, I know that I've previously worked maybe not necessarily community organizations, but have reached out to people, communities, businesses. And on reflection, I think I haven't spent time to build that trust and that relationship. And that wasn't the priority at the time. And it's interesting how this particular partnership between us evolved to become something very genuine and trustable.
Yeah, because I also remember when you approached me to join the project, I was heavily pregnant, and then first year of the project, I was on maternity leave. So doing more research was really not on my list, but I just felt that this is something different, something it's not just about collecting the data, but it's something real to do something together. Yeah, so that's really interesting, isn't it? That idea of trust. So you didn't really have a research idea in mind. You just thought there might be something in there that you could maybe work on. Yeah. So the truth is there was no research question at the beginning, which was a little bit of a lucky situation. There was a grant at the time that supported research, which was more about the engagement with the community rather than creating some kind of research literature review. But I think we approached it like we knew our strengths as researchers. We knew what are our skills, and then it kind of progressed organically. And we talked to Adama and Fatma, like what are their challenges, and then we took it back and thought like, okay, this is how we can approach it. And then we went back to them and said like, is this what you think could be good for your organization or for the community? So it was really like this slow development. And yeah, the research questions or anything that comes with the publication came very much after or later in the process. Yeah. So I guess if I back the truck up even further, Najmeh, how did you even come to pick up the phone in the first place? Like, did you have a mutual connection, or did you just randomly look in the phone book? Or
Yeah, that's a great question, because I probably also, I have to go a bit further back. So at the time I was doing a project around the role of leisure for refugees and their settlement. And I attended a webinar as part of the Refugee Week where Fatma was representing the community organization, Somali Welfare Cultural Association, and she was presenting in that webinar about the role of community organizations in the settlement of refugees, the amazing work they do, but also the struggles they face as part of not being recognized broadly as a community organization. I mean, not just SWCA, but broadly community organizations, in how effective they are in the settlement journey of refugees. So listening to her, I don't know what it was. It was definitely something she said or the way she said it that I quickly thought, actually, I felt like we could work together, and there might be a way that we could support them in addressing some of those challenges. So I did look her up, knowing that she represented SWCA. It wasn't too hard to go on Google and find contact numbers for SWCA. So I called her, and I just mentioned to her, like, I've listened to what you said, and we are researchers. Is there any, and I'm interested in this topic genuinely about refugees and their settlement. So how do you think we can support you based on the research capacities that we have? So that's how it all started, with that telephone call.
Nice. Okay, so that's part one. How did you get started? Part two is, how did you work together? Talk me through that. Once you'd made that initial contact, you'd kind of decided maybe these are some challenges that we can maybe help out with, or yeah.
I think for me, what stood out was how we made decisions. So we had broad ideas, you know, as a group. For many years, we've been thinking for the Africultures Festival, we really want to see what the impact of the work that we're doing. We get it anecdotally. The community is saying, oh, it's been great. You can see the progression and the changes, but we didn't have anything written down to prove that. So we had some idea around impact. And what the work looked like was a decision we made together with Najmeh and Pavlina and the other committee members as well. We really sat down and talked through what is it that we wanted to achieve? How is this study going to look like? Mm-hmm. And that flexibility was really important as well from their end and our end to make sure, you know, it is at the end of the day, it's research, but also we've got to meet the community's needs and so on. So it was a collective decision making. I think that's what stood out for me. It didn't feel like I was going through academic research at all.
Mm. Yeah. And I think you made it so easy because straight away you accepted that it wasn't a decision by one person, but Africultures run by a committee. And obviously bringing all the community committee together to decide on anything took time. And you kind of didn't push any timelines or agenda. We just went along and blended together and just, it was really good working relationship. You didn't feel like, you know, their researches, they just became one of the girls kind of. Yeah.
And it's funny because I guess to give a bit of context, we ended up doing multiple projects. And one of the first ones that we started when I made that call to you, Fatma, was around the mapping of the roles of the organization. SWCA being mainly volunteer run, you wanted to map the roles and responsibilities for career progression and for succession planning. So we started with that. And myself, I was very, at the time, I didn't know exactly where to start, and I hadn't done that type of work. And I think being vulnerable and in reflection with Pavlina, we talk about this, how we told you that, look, we haven't done this before, but we'll make sure that we do it the way that you want. And we had to go to our networks and ask here and there and find out what would be the best way to do it and approach it, knowing what the community wanted. And that vulnerability, me and Pavlina being vulnerable as researchers, I think you saw that and that helped with that sense of trust and relationship building.
Yeah, that's true. I think if there are any researchers in the audience, I think you know that oftentimes you see a phenomenon happening and you kind of impose your research expertise, your theories that you normally use because you just normally see it through that lens. But in this one, we had to kind of step away from that and realize that, okay, I think we need to learn something else to kind of then be able to help the community. So even then open mindset, like, I think we can't do it in a way that we normally do the research. Yeah. So, yeah. So it felt a little bit, we were a little bit unsure, but about the whole thing, but just stepping outside of our comfort zone. But yeah, it worked well.
And I think with this process also, not making a decision is a decision. Like, it was not saying anything is a decision. Sorry. We just let things evolve organically because we had, like, you know, we had thoughts and ideas, and then we just see things just progress and became clearer. And not having that fixed up front. This is a research question. This is what needs to happen. Has to be produced by this time. Not having that up front actually just allowed the process to occur organically. Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing that stood out with the community was their language and everything was all in different formats. So we just don't talk about data. We talk more about storytelling. And you're so acceptable of this and just listen to us, just worked alongside with us. That made a huge difference, I think.
So you've kind of touched on this already, but how did you go about that co-design of the project? So what process did it take? And I imagine, like, it sounds like it took quite a long time.
Yeah, and I can say we are still co-designing it through all those 3 years. I guess it was already mentioned at the beginning, the grant that we received as the first grant for this project, for the initial project, a little bit enabled us to do that. But it was really talking listening to Fatma and Adama, what their challenges are, and prioritizing these needs, but also being open that we are coming from an academic institution and we have our performance goals and all other things, and being open about that one. But it's simply like it's developed very organically from doing the ethics application together, designing the surveys, designing the interviews together, basically everything, getting the input, and not just saying like, this is the thing, can you give us feedback, but really kind of asking like, what do you need in the survey to be, so you get some kind of outputs for yourself. And then we created a survey, and then we said like, but we as researchers also needs these instruments for the hypothesis and other things. So and I would say, yeah, there are lots of articles and books about co-design and everything, but it's also sometimes you have to just rely on your gut feeling that what's right thing to do, and that's, I think, was also part of the process that kind of guided us through that.
Yeah, because you can read as many books as you like, but when you're actually doing it,
yeah,
all of that book stuff kind of goes out the window, doesn't it? And you think,
Yeah.
oh,
And I think everybody would know that, you know, if you do it properly, co-designing takes a while, especially when you want or trying to do it properly, really, with everybody's voices included. You gave us the time and the space to do it. And it showed you were just not partnering, but you are really, we were practicing it as we went here technically.
So I'm curious, Fatma and Adama, had you worked with academics before? And if so, what were your expectations?
So yes, worked with academics before in different capacities, on different types of projects, and it was
you don't
very
have
much
to name names. It's okay.
No, I won't do that because it's being recorded. I know where it's going to land. I think it's often I'm the recruiter, so they'll come and say, "Oh, you've got access to X people. Can you bring them? Because we need X surveys or X number to be in a focus group." So it was very, you give me this, and everyone gets a voucher for participation. And I understand why you need, people to be interviewed for research, but the topics that they were coming to us for weren't priorities for us. As the Africultures Festival, there were important topics in the community, and sometimes say, we'll help you because we do need this project to be completed, but it didn't reflect the work that we were doing as the Africultures team, or it was a priority for us at that time. So I think it's in that context that we often were approached, and it wasn't often, we weren't the knowledge holders, we were access to something.
So you were being used, like taking stuff from you.
Yes.
Extraction.
That's been my experience.
And normally the experience obviously is mixed working with researchers, especially as Adama said, if they bring their own agendas, you don't feel like, we feel like, you are the gatekeeper for the community, and you feel like the community, the process hasn't involved the community. So therefore, I think the output and everything really doesn't belong to the community, or the community doesn't get anything at the end of it.
What about Pavlina and Najmeh? Had you worked with community organisations before? And if so, what were your expectations going into this?
Me and Pavlina have talked about this, and this is a combined response. We had, neither of us had worked with the community organisations the way we have with Somali Welfare and Cultural Association. I guess we have approached small businesses, maybe community members, to collect data. But on reflection and in hindsight, I think we were those type of researchers. We were probably considered as doing extractive research and wanting to answer the research questions that we were after. And yes, maybe offering vouchers and participants, but that was the extent of it. So No, not like this. And this has been, for me personally, it's been a very great learning journey in terms of how to actually do genuine community engagement work and research. It's time consuming, yes. It takes a lot of energy and effort, yes, but it is very, very rewarding. And I think that's what has kept us going and this relationship just continuing for more than 3 years now.
That's really special. So that leads us really nicely into the part 3, which is the challenges and the joys. Talk us through things like self-doubt and emotional investment and pride.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of those. I talked about joys, but we did have a lot of self-doubt as well. And one of the things that me and Pavlina were always concerned about was whether we are asking too much. For presentations, like even a presentation like this, whose audience are mainly academics, we always wanted to have the voice of the community, but we were concerned as to whether we're asking too much, whether we're taking, we're basically asking them to take time out of their day to come and present with us, and that requires preparation and going through stuff. And so that question has always been at the back of our mind as to whether we're asking you too much, and we always approach you with that in mind whenever we're inviting you to co-present and do stuff with us.
Yeah, and for me, I think it was probably the reverse. I think knowing that for the first time I've come across academics who were saying, yeah, we'll create a research question together, and it's actually something that what's been produced has met the needs. You know, we've used it for funding applications, for proposals, and just to document the impact we've had as a community-led event. And so it's been quite important, the output. So for me, it was always, oh, they've invested so much time. How am I doing enough? Am I giving back? I'm saying yes to opportunities, but am I actually contributing enough? So that's something I've always questioned about myself when I was,
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, because we want everyone to know about the research and how it was done. Really, it's really good practice. But also at the same time, even though you gave us so many dates, you said there's a web now, we can come and talk. You just felt if you didn't make any of those dates was a disappointment for us.
And I remember it's always like life happens. You are doing the research, but like it's not from to a type of research. And like as I mentioned at the beginning, I was on most of the first year of the project. I was on maternity leave, and I was still trying to contribute, but it was like, am I contributing enough? And coming to the meetings with a baby on my lap, or a baby trying to settle down. So yeah, it's always like your life happens in the background, but you're trying to kind of like merge it together. And the committee has been just fantastic to kind of accommodating it. Even like now when I'm not bringing my baby anymore, they're kind of asking like, where is she? It's like,
we always call
so
her,
lovely.
she's part of the family now. Allow the baby, who is not a baby anymore, but she's part of the family. So yes, we had all these struggles and doubts and questions and self-doubts, I should say. But of course, there's always been joy, and that conversation that we sit together every now and then when we do have time, the four of us to sit and talk, and those conversations that do spark maybe new ideas or things to think about, they are so rewarding, as I mentioned before, and something we always look forward to.
Yeah, and that sense of pride, I think, because we've taken the community along this journey with us, I think we definitely feel that sense of pride that the community feels about the work we've done together. You know, we've got people who meet us in the shops and talk about the work that we've done and what a festival means to them, and how now it's a report that's written and they can see it. It actually captures what they were feeling. So I think taking the community along, it's not just us as a committee, it's the whole community as well as seeing the impact of the work that we're doing. And
Yeah, and it was such a beautiful report, like really well put together, but so comprehensive. And, you know, reading it, I felt like I was there, you know, I felt your pride, because it was so evident, you know, the depth of that report was, phenomenal. And it's a real credit to you. So Pavlina and Najmeh, you've kind of touched on this a little bit, and actually Fatma and Adama, you have too. But were you ever worried that the pressures that come from the university from within about publishing and reporting and stuff could take the focus away from the community priorities?
Yes, I'd probably lie if I'd say no, but yes, because as academics, and the audience would know that we're always pressured by timelines and publications and getting them out. Of course, I think it depends on the individual, because some of us can push back, some of us can resist, some of us can say no. Of course, it might depend on how senior or junior we are in the academic ladder. But I think in discussions with Pavlina, we've also realized that from the very beginning, while those pressures might be there, at least for this project, which is we're claiming and we're wanting it to be genuinely community engaged, we have to resist those pressures, and we won't have to give in to those pressures. And so while they were there, our main and first priority was making sure that the community is getting what they want. And so if that meant, for example, prioritizing a report, which we have had previously had to do that, because Adama and Fatma were going for a grant that was due and they needed the report. And so we have prioritized the report because that is what the community needs. So yes, there has always been that concern. But at least with this project, I think we've always tried to make sure that those relationships come first, because if the relationship comes first and the foundation is built right, and then you continue with that trust, I think then the academic outputs can come later. And we've seen that in our project. It's a 3-year partnership we built, and only some of the academic outputs are coming out just now after that many years.
And that's the benefit of this idea of slow scholarship, isn't it? It's relational, and the outputs will come whenever they come. But I guess you couldn't have all of your research being done like that, or the university would probably have something to say, wouldn't they? Well, like not just UTS, but my university would be the same. They'd be like, "Oh, where's your outputs for this year?" So you've got to have your quick and dirty ones that you can get out there while you're working on the really cool stuff with the community as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Strategic. I like it. Okay, so the last part is your key learnings. What did you learn from the project, looking back on it now? What insights have you got for the rest of us who are desperate to do this kind of thing?
I think for me, after working with you good ladies, is that researchers really forget the communities involved. They're more worried about, the outcomes and the research matter, but and those communities have their own ways. So it's so important to understand what they're about. Is this really something they want? And a good example for ourselves is that, we were ready to undertake this work they got to be ready for what is it involves them. They want it. We had a lot of, I thought we told a good story about the projects we've done always, but we were getting pushbacks saying, show us evidence. What is the logic? Show us data. And we just couldn't produce this without the partnership and the support from Pavlina and Najmeh. So I think it is important that, all that process is followed. Our communities have, they also have traditions, the way they tell their stories. Some are just orally, they speak, but that doesn't mean, researchers should just limit it themselves, or this is how I want it done. I want it in paper form, or I want it this way. They should just be open to communities and just drive or walk with them.
And for me, I think it's that relationship is probably the biggest part. The fact that we took time to develop the relationship, and I think reflecting, it's like we leaned into our culture a lot with this project, because that's what matters, right? That's how, as Africultures, that's how we the festival has grown. We've spent time investing in relationships across the different communities here in Sydney, and that's how the festival's grown, where people want to come along and showcase their cultural background. And I think that's the approach we took on this project as well. We invested in developing a relationship, getting to know each other, and then saying this is what we need and this is how we're going to work together. And so it's not these are researchers and we're the community. It's like, actually, we're friends. We're friends, and this is how we go about. And we're not looking forward to the day when the formal relationship ends in terms of research, but I think we've got friends now, and that's probably the most important thing for us.
I think for me, and some of you in the audience might have worked with me before, Trudy, you have definitely. I am a control freak. And I think
no, you're not. You're organized. You're organized.
I think the whole process taught me to let go, to be able to let go and trust the process and trust the people. That has been probably the biggest learning for me. I do go back to my old ways every now and then when I'm doing projects, but I think it's been a very good learning journey for me as an individual.
Yeah, I agree. In other project, it's very easy to say, done, goodbye, here is your output, and I might see you ever again, maybe not. But this one, it never feels finished, and I think it never will finish. It's still ongoing now, and it's a different type of commitment, I guess, compared to other projects.
And I suppose for community organizations, when for us, what we've realized is that we don't have to be afraid to ask the questions and say, oh, this is the way we want it done, because always the right partner will come that will respect that. If you don't ask, then I don't think it'll happen for you. We'll always be waiting for somebody else to do something else. And I think now that we've built this great foundation, I can't see the work finishing really for us.
And then I think it's also about, for us, I think as volunteer run, we're doing this in a voluntary capacity. It's really important that there is understanding that communities can do things for themselves, that it's not always about being a recipient of a service or something, that we actually have that strength within us. And I think this partnership is showcasing that. And it's not about me or Fatma or our individual names, but it's about a community as a whole to say, this is what the communities here have been able to do, this, what this event contributes to, this is support the communities are giving each other. And that's the most important thing. So whether we get asked to 100 different events or whatever, we will go because it's about the community and what showcases that work that's being done.
I'm curious, actually, how do you think that this project has changed the way you respond to the extractive researchers who come with you? Do you look at them a different way? Has this empowered you to maybe say to some of them, you know what, no thanks, or do it our way?
Oh, look, definitely. I think we've had an experience last year, the year before, of a researcher wanting to come to the festival to do extractive work. And I was like, I don't have time. I'm sorry. We invested in hosting the festival, but also we actually do have a process in place for doing research. And this is the way that this is the way that we work. And we can't invest time in that because we're not going to, what's the outcome that you're trying to achieve? It's an important issue, but we can't invest time in that. So we've just put boundaries about what we can and can't do.
Nice. So on that basis, what advice would the two of you have for academics who want to work with community organisations, but also for community organisations who might be approached by an academic?
I think probably it'd be about researchers to immerse themselves within the community. Don't just, think it'll happen. Don't be observant, just go with the flow. If they're having a Ethiopian coffee, just go have the Ethiopian coffee. And through that discussion is where you'll really find the need, what is required, and the communities will be listening then and wanting to know, oh, you can help me, or you can support us with this. This is how really it works with those communities. So it's just immersing yourself, very simple.
Yeah.
You can't do it from a university building. Both these ladies invested heavily in being out there in the suburbs within the communities, really. And that reflects the good work and the good practice that has come out of it.
And then for the community organisations, I think that often they underestimate the knowledge they have. And so one, value the knowledge and the skills you've got, but also it's reach out. Because I think that if there was more approaching academics and universities to partner on research, it would be, we all have something to benefit. So actually taking that step and saying, actually, can you help us with this? This is what we're thinking. This is what we need. And being forward is in their approach. Because I think, yeah, there's a lot of hesitation in reaching out, feeling as though academics or researchers are somewhere else. They're not accessible is often the view, which is not the case. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to find one that you can tame, don't you?
Yeah.
Pavlina and Najmeh, what advice do you have for academics who want to work with community organisations?
I guess definitely go for it. But no, I guess you can start small. Like, you don't need to kind of engage yourself in a full-scale ethnography or something. You can really start small, like maybe on the projects you already work on, maybe investing more in conversations or talking to communities, maybe who are not your key informant group, but having conversations, or maybe when entering the field, maybe having more conversations about like how you can help them, and then designing the research project. So even like these small steps could be just a start of it. And then as our project also started with a very small project, and then it's kind of like expanded. I think the key is really active listening, to really be open to the fact that the community really is the source of knowledge, and you are the one who can absolutely harness it, but through the trust and that work together, it really can then grow. And you know, it's you, and we mentioned it several times, it's also about being open about your own deadlines, performance reviews, need to publish and everything. And we really, with Najmeh, we try to bring it on a table very early on, like, you know, it's all great. We are able to invest all our time and everything, but there are also these things we then need to kind of provide. So most importantly, be patient. Community research does take time, but it's absolutely rewarding. So yeah.
I guess, I mean, Pavlina said it all, but I think the one thing that we haven't talked about is the importance within academia of collaborators. So we've talked about working with community organizations, but having the right collaborators. So me and Pavlina have been great in working together on this project. We agreed on everything, and whether there was any disagreement, we always talk about it openly. And I think that's key, because if we were not on the same page in terms of what to expect or what we want, or if one of us were to prioritize one thing rather than the other, then there would have been clashes, and then maybe the relationship would have fallen apart. So choosing collaborators that we work with, I think it's, as we know, it's important in all projects, but given the nature of these community engaged projects, it's even more important, because it requires a lot of patience and a lot of maybe changing the mindset in terms of what looks at success, because success can look different in a traditional project, whereas it might look very different in a community engaged project. Success, very, very different, and being aligned in what that means, I think is key.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, well, that's all at the end of our part of it. Let's throw it open for questions for the audience. Thank you so much. I'm like, my brain is just going a million miles an hour now, thinking of all the things I've done wrong in the past. But lots of great advice there for how I can do better for next time. So yeah, any questions from the audience? Who wants to start us off?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Pete, go ahead. So you're from Tairua. Do you want to give us just a little bit of background?
I don't want to take too much time. I'm a retired academic, and I've had a history of working with community groups in the UK and in New Zealand. My question really is whether the team that have presented this afternoon feel that they have achieved the objectives that they set for themselves, both academically and in the practice.
Yeah. Did you first
Yeah,
from a community perspective?
I'd probably say 150%, you know, we've really achieved. The document, the research report that was we had has been shared in so many, even with politicians. I think we look healthier financial because of that report, because people can see the evidence, read about it rather than hearing about it. So for us, definitely, yeah, we've had a big success.
And I think for us, apart from the fact that, I mean, again, we agreed early on that research outputs at the time is not priority. After 3 years of this, we're now working on the research outputs, academic outputs, I mean. So that is coming out soon. But apart from that, I think the relationship and what has come out of that has been key for us. So both Fatma and Adama and the connections they've had, us knowing them, they have put us in touch with others or made available to us other opportunities as researchers. And so I think for us that has been amazing. That's what you want as a researcher, I guess, apart from the research outputs.
Yeah.
And I guess my second part of my question, and then I will be quiet, is to what extent your stakeholders, your actors, can verify that your research outputs have been useful for them. I'm thinking in terms of perhaps business and politics. You didn't specifically mention the stakeholders other than the people you're working with there. Can you comment on the success for those stakeholders?
If I understand the question right, so the report that was written for the community organization in terms of the impact of the festival, that was used because the festival relies on grants. And so the report was used to present to, that's what Fatma meant, to politicians and who are the councils, basically local councils and New South Wales
State government.
Yeah. And so that was used to actually gain further funding for the festival. Yeah. I don't know whether you have anything else.
Yeah, and I think we've also used it around sponsorship as well. So we've had a couple of sponsors trying to look at who comes to the festival, just the profile and the impact it's had. So we've handed them the report and they've looked at it and they said, okay, actually, this is the cohort who we're trying to target. Yeah, so we've used it in a couple of different ways because I guess the content was so broad and goes back to the beginning of what are we trying to achieve and having conversations with the different people who are involved in the festival and understand what they want to see as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got time for some more questions if anyone wants to chip in. Rich.
Yeah, firstly, fantastic to see this work's going on, and it's very topical. We've just had the Action Learning, Action Research Congress, which we had 2 days at AUT, and there's just been 2 days at UTS. So if you don't know Keith Haggart, you need to connect with, he's in your Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at UTS. Would have been brilliant. I don't know if you spoke at it, but this is exactly what we've been talking about for the last 4 days. I'm curious, you said about the funding, Najmeh. You said you kind of had the funding, but no project to spend it on. It was just funding attached to do something in the community.
Yeah.
How long were you sitting on that pot, or how did you get that? Because that's usually the challenge. Usually we do this participation action research, we make all these relationships, and the minute we go for funding, then all of a sudden you are working under a time limit but you had the money first?
Yeah. So thanks, Richard, for the question. We were very lucky, and this is where you say the stars aligned, because at the same time that I approached Fatma, this was about June, July-ish, that's when Refugee Week is, our faculty just opened a new grant scheme around partnerships and working with partners. And that was mainly, it wasn't a very big amount, it was a very minimal amount, but it was around building those relationships. So there wasn't necessarily the expectation to write about theory in your application or do a literature review. It was very much that money to be used about building these relationships. And I think we're forever thankful for our institution and our faculty for having that in place, because then it helped us initiate that this project. And from there, then there was another grant at the university level, which was all about social impact. And again, that was around bringing in a partner organization and working with a partner organization. And so within that, they offered us training around doing theory of change, and that's when we had started talking with Fatma and Adama. So we made sure that we went through the process of theory of change to have a shared understanding of what is it, how is it that they're doing things, what are their priorities, and how can we come in to support. So yeah, it was timing that type of funding was made available, and it just goes to say the support that is required by institutions, by our universities, in terms of giving academics that liberty and that freedom to do stuff in their own time with a little bit of money. I think that's something that can go a long way if we offer that.
Yeah, it reminds it, and again, true to what I would say, the work we do a lot with the Maori population, and again, you need that little bit of koha, you need that little bit to help win the trust and win the relationship, just to sort of spend time with people, and you do need some money for that, just to kind of say, hey, we're coming to the table. So now that we've just got this fund, which is more about research translation, so it's the other way, you do the research, now translate it so it's relevant to the public, and it's like, well, actually we should start with that fund, please. So fantastic.
But Richard, it's interesting you say that, because now that type of funding for research translation was available to us at the beginning, but it wasn't relevant to us. Now, 3 years on, we've actually just recently tapped into that funding, and we applied and we were successful. And it's now about mainly translating the impact and showing the impact that our project has made. So it's also about timing as well. You would want to have started that project so that, as you said, by the time you go for that grant, it's time to show the impact that it's making.
Yeah, well, that's probably a perfect place to end it. I'd like to finish just a little bit before 4 o'clock so people have time for a bathroom break before their next meeting. I would just like to say a massive thank you to the 4 of you for giving up your time today and sharing your wisdom. As I said, I know that my brain is fizzing with ideas for what I can do next, and by the sounds of it, some of our audience members feel the same. So I will just close with a karakia or a prayer. If I can share my screen, come along now. Can I find it? Yes, I can. Okay, so in the tradition, not from the beginning, we will finish up with a prayer, a karakia, to move us from where we are now back into the rest of our days. So this is He Karakia Whakakapi. Kia whakaere te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataka ai, haumie, huie, taikie.
Taikie.
So thank you, everybody. There will be a recording uploaded to the ANZALS website and also to our YouTube channel in the next few days. And I will also send you out a quick and dirty 2-question survey that should take you under a minute to complete. So thank you so much again to our panelists, and thank you to our audience members. Hope you had fun and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
you very much.
Kia pai tora.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.